Rana Bhakata Sharana Nishka Rana Bhakata Sharana Taji Jati Kula Shampada Bhagawan Sri Bhagawan Vari Yatha Premar Panam Samadara Shana Premar Panam Samadara Shana Jaga Jana Dukha Jai Sampada Tava Sri Pada Bhava Goshpada Variyatha Premarpana Samadara Shana Premarpana Samadara Shana Jaga Jana Dukha Jai Namo Namo Prabhu Bhakyamanadita Namo Namo Prabhu Bhakyamanadita Manavachanaika Dhan Prabhu Manavachanaika Dhan Jyotir Jyotir Jala Hridi Kandar Jyotir Jyotir Jala Hridi Kandar Tumitam Bhanjana Har Prabhu Tumitam Bhanjana Har Namo Namo Prabhu Bhakyamanadita Namo Namo Prabhu Bhakyamanadita Manavachanaika Dhar Prabhu Manavachanaika Dhar Jyotir Jyotir Jala Hridi Kandar Jyotir Jyotir Jala Hridi Kandar Tumitam Bhanjana Har Prabhu Tumitam Bhanjana Har Bhede Bhedanga Ranga Bhanga Bhaje Anga Sanga Vedanga Bhede Bhedanga Ranga Bhanga Bhaje Anga Sanga Vedanga Gaiche Chanda Bhagata Vrinda Arati Tomar Gaiche Chanda Bhagata Vrinda Arati Tomar Jaya Jaya Arati Tomar Har Har Arati Tomar Shiva Shiva Arati Tomar Handana Bhagavan जय श्री गुरु महाराज जी की जय। ओम ह्रीं ऋतं त्वमचलो गुणजित् गुणेभ्यः नात्तं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे यतोऽहं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदये न मे भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसां त्वयि तृप्ततृष्णां रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मारुत्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोर्मि नाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यां करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी शान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं तु अशरणो जगदेकगम्यं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्म स्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ सर्वमङ्गल माङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते सृष्टिस्थिति विनाशानां शक्तिभूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमाये नारायणी नमोस्तुते शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute. जय महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय। जय भगवान बुद्ध देव जी की जय। Sri Buddha's Dev Stotra, page 224. न ब्रह्मलोके न च देवलोके न यक्षगन्धर्व मनुष्यलोके लोकस्य जाति जरापनेता नान्योऽस्ति तत्त्वो हि मनुष्यचन्द्रः वन्दितास्त्वं शूरैषेन्द्रैः ऋषिभिश्चापि पूजितः वैद्य सर्वस्य लोकस्य वन्देऽहमपि त्वां विभो लोके क्लेशाग्निसन्तप्ते प्रादुर्भूतो महाह्रदः नमस्तु बोधिसत्त्वाय सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरे लोके प्रादुर्भूत प्रदीपकः नमोस्तु बोधिसत्त्वाय सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। शोकसागरकान्तारे यानश्रेष्ठस्वरूपकः नमस्तु बोधिसत्त्वाय सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। क्लेशबन्धनबद्धानां प्रादुर्भूत प्रमोचकः नमोस्तु बोधिसत्त्वाय सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। जराव्याधिकिल्बिषाणां प्रादुर्भूतभिषग्वरः नमोस्तु बोधिसत्त्वाय सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु 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 बोधिसत्त्वाय सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। सम्बुद्धाय नमो नमः। Today is Buddha Purnima, the birth anniversary of Bhagawan Buddha Dev. On this occasion, Swami Dayamurtyanandaji Maharaj will throw some light on the life and teachings of Gautam Buddha.
ॐ बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, संघं शरणं गच्छामि, धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि. It is over 2500 years ago that Buddha came to this planet. In somewhere in 1956, the 2500th anniversary of his final departure was observed. In Nalanda, the many country representatives came together to greet and exchange the message of Buddha from Tibet, China, from India, of course. And apart from this, scholars from Nepal, Burma, Ceylon all contributed towards the teachings of Buddha. Nearly half the world is attracted by Buddha in one or the other way. During the life of Buddha, that is from 566 to 480 BC, his life and mission was restricted to a small area. It was Ashoka who spread the message from 269 to 232 BC. He made it as his own religion, and he was instrumental in broadcasting this religion, not only in India but beyond its borders. Ashoka's son and daughter, Mahendra and Sangamitra, they conveyed it to Ceylon, and later on it spread to Central Asia, China, Korea, and Japan, 4th to 6th century AD. This religion has made a profound impact on the people, not only in the religious field, but also on the whole outlook of life, culturally, and it led to development of saints, ascetics, missionaries, statesmen, physicians, artists, poets, and so on. It is this developed religion, not only the religion, the advanced philosophy, metaphysics, psychology, rituals, and finally Zen, that attract people in many ways. The universality of Buddha's teaching is what is what attracts humans, because of this interest and feeling for humanity, the peace, the soothing balm which one gets when one comes to Buddha. This is applicable even to this day, and it can avert great tragedies. Whatever Buddha thought is very vital, and it is important for man's inner progress. It leads to harmonious living both within and without. How a man becomes Buddha? By constantly striving, and after enlightenment, he showed the path to all others, and out of his own compassion. We read Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. This is the Upanishadic prayer, wherein three aspirations are there. And when after achieving it, the person who achieves it shows it to others. It is not very common that everybody who achieves it spreads it across. Like we read in the Gita, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye Yatatam Api Siddhanam Kaschin Mam Veti Tattvataha. Out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows the truth. And still among those are willing to spread it to others. Buddha was one of them. Buddha was born prince, and he renounced his royal luxuries and all the pleasures in order to find a path, and that's how he became God. It is this teaching that is the real, it is his teaching that is the real legacy. The discipline that he evolved and ordained to attain truth. He emphasized that the ethical conduct is the essence of the religion and not rituals and ceremonies. Buddha's religion reached the doors of people and he taught them in their own language. In his eyes, each person is capable of rising to the highest stage by his own efforts. He said, "Be a light unto yourself." Buddha may be considered as the first founder of a disciplined and organized religion, monastic order, and also successfully beyond the expectation of many people. He stood for peace and harmony. In the pre-Buddhistic era, how the Buddha's life uh, all evolved around both the sides of the Ganga, almost midway somewhere when in the present Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. This roughly comprised of the areas of Kosala, Malla, Kashi, Mithila, Anga, and Magadha. Broadly speaking, at that time there were two schools which are very important. One is the Brahmanas, the other is the Shramanas. Brahmanas followed the Vedic and Upanishadic culture, and Shramanas did not pledge any loyalty to Vedas or Upanishads, and they went in search of truth in their own way, and Buddha followed both of them in his pursuit for truth. Regarding his lineage and birth, there are two important places associated with his early life. One is Lumbini and the other is Kapilavastu. Today, both of them are in Nepal. Lumbini, no doubt, is the birthplace of Buddha. It is identified as early as the third. It was identified by Ashoka as early as the 3rd century, and he put up a 15 feet stone chunar pillar and wrote, "Here the exalted one was born." And later on there were many stupas found. We find many stupas around that. So what it all indicates is it was a pilgrimage, place of pilgrimage. Lumbini at that time was more or less like a pleasure garden, the forest, the king's pleasure garden, and Kapilavastu was the capital of the Sakya clan. His mother was Maya Devi, who stayed almost the same distance from Lumbini to Kapilavastu on the other side. It is said that when Buddha was born, Maya Devi was on her way to her father's place. So the Sakya clan belongs to the Solar dynasty, and their area was about 900 square miles, bounded by Himalayas to the north, river Rohini on the east, Rapti on the south and west. The area was rich with rice fields and irrigated by the Himalayan streams. The word Shuddhodana being the father of Buddha means, Shuddha means pure, Odhana means rice. So his wealth in the form of pure rice. So Buddha's mother belonged to a Kanhya clan and came from Devadaha, which is not traceable today. Since Buddha came from the Sakya clan, he is known as Sakya Muni or Sakya Simha. Siddhartha was the name given to him by birth, by Rishi Asita. We read in the Bhagavad Gita, Asita Devalo Vyasa. So this Asita, he had predicted that the child would be a founder of a religion. On the Vaishakhi Purnima day, 563 BC, today being Vaishakha Purnima, Buddha was born. 7 days after his birth, his mother Maya Devi passed away, and Mahapajapati, who was Maya Devi's sister, took charge of the child. 2 astrologers predicted that the child would become a Chakravarti. Chakravarti means, Chakra means wheel. Varti means who moves. Who, it could mean either he would be the king or he would move the wheel of dharma. The father was not very happy, but the Asita Muni said there is no doubt of him being the founder of a religion. He was very sure of that. The predictions of the astrologers did not please the king. He wanted his son to be his heir, and he did all possible things so that the child is not in any way coming across sorrow or suffering. The father took great care that nobody even spoke to the prince about sorrow, and his associates were chosen. He was always surrounded by companions who would not give him any chance of knowing anything about suffering or misery. There are two incidents about his early life. One is about a wounded swan in his forest garden. Once, when he was roaming about in the garden, he found a wounded swan which was uh, hit by a arrow by one of the hunters. He was very much pained by this, full of feeling for others, this distress. It was something like a suppressed fountain in his heart. This probably later on must have uh, helped him about the doctrine of karma, help him expound more on the doctrine of karma. And then the second incident is about a trance when he was sitting in the garden under a rose apple tree. He experienced some unnatural uh, uh, joy, and he was always wanting that such things should keep repeating itself. The similar thing can be compared in Swami Vivekananda's life when Thakur once gave him this experience. Shuddhodana arranged Siddhartha's marriage with Yashodhara, who also belonged to his own clan. He was blessed with a son, Rahul. The impact with suffering and renunciation. Somewhere deep hunger was what made Nachiketa refuse the heavenly pleasures offered by Yama. And the same thing Maitreyi, the wife of Yajnavalkya, also said no to the profound wealth that was offered by her husband. For what? In that place, they wanted to know about immortality. Such undercurrents must have fed Siddhartha. A very strong reaction and suppressed tendencies of this prince must have made some higher impact on him. And after 4 incidents, he left the palace. The story goes that one day he was driving his chariot along the royal road, and he found a decrepit man. He realized that all those who are young are bound to become old and be reduced to helpless figures. This chain of thoughts started glooming within. The other instance was of a sick man who was groaning with pain. That first one was over age person becomes miserable. But here, any person, any age, a person of any age can become miserable. Utter helplessness, extreme weakness, he pondered over this. However high a person may be placed, he will be having such suffering. And the other thing he came across was of a Shramana or an ascetic who was clean shaven, and he was holding a kamandalu and a stick. But what was very much striking was he was self-possessed, and he was so calm in his temperament. When he asked the ascetic how come, he said, I am in search of a higher truth, and I want to free myself from suffering, miseries, and complexities. And so the whole picture of human life stood before the prince: suffering, misery, and then there is a way how to go out of the misery, and there are people who have succeeded. The reason of his renunciation was totally internal, and it was subjective. There was that inner urge, strong urge for him to find the truth. Finally, on the day of his renunciation, it was the full moon day of Uttarashada, that he took leave of the palace. Somewhere about midnight, he left the house, and before he left the house, he was tempted to see his wife. He very slyly opened the door and wanted to touch the prince, but he felt, oh, what if his wife gets up? And he uh, simply escaped from the palace. He told his uh, trusted charioteer Chana to take him to take him and his horse Kantaka. It is said that the whole night they traveled somewhere about 45 miles. They had crossed the Sakyas, Kolias, and Mallas area, and he alighted there in the morning. After alighting, he undressed himself, handed over the royal robes to Channa, and asked him to return home. He then cut off his hair and took a gourd as a begging bowl and disappeared in wilderness. It is said that the Kantaka, the horse, died heartbroken and did not return to the city. It was only Channa who went back pensively and informed the sad news. The eternal quest begins. Renunciation is only half of the whole episode. It is it is only the half the story. It is something like stopping what all we have been pursuing all these years and going towards something different. That Vairagya is going towards Shreya against Preya, which we have been following all these years. This seeker's mind is set against the lower joys, and it is bent upon higher joys. This is, they are looking for a positive attitude. Buddha went that way, and he led a detached life, and his aim was nirvana. This was the eternal quest. About his sadhana, the chronology and places he visited differ very differently, and sometimes it's even contradictory by various commentators. It would be safe if we just view it from the psychological and ideological development and evolution. Buddha's consciousness was in his entire being was involved in search of that state, in that state of mind, which would result in transcendence and conquest all kinds of sufferings. He had an open mind and tried all methods which appealed to him with earnestness. The place where Buddha had reached in the Malla country was Anupiya. He soon left that place and went to Vaishali, which in those days were full of Shramanas and Brahmanas. It is mentioned that there were 62 different schools of thought prevalent at that time. Among the schools of that which impressed Siddhartha was Nirgranthas, that is, those without knot or we can say without problems, or those who wore seamless clothes. What he understood was there is no end to the variety of observances and austerities. So he went and stayed along with uh, 5 of his companions near Varanasi. The austerities he observed was to overcome the feeling of disgust and dislike. So he used to eat the dung of young calves. Sometimes he used to eat so less that day by day the food would come to nil. Or sometimes he would hold only a morsel of food in his palm, whatever his palm could hold, either pulses or some creepers or beans or anything like that, to the extreme. And he later on recollected saying that if I sat on the seat, it looked as if like a camel hoof. That much was the space occupied by me. And sometimes he used to say the spine felt like a, like some uh, he could like some spindles, or sometimes when he tried to strike his limbs with his hand, the uh, hair from his body fell down. Sometimes he said, I wanted to touch my skin of the belly, and I actually touched my spine. So he had become so lean and thin. When all these drastic methods failed to give Siddhartha the equanimity of mind for which he was striving, he started eating properly, and then he found that uh, whatever samskaras he had, it started filling his mind with greater vigor. And then he felt that this is not the way. Mortification will not help. Overeating is not going to help. And then he concluded that he will take normal food and once he started getting original strength, his companions thought he is now not going to do any tapasya. So they started leaving him. He pleaded with them, remonstrated, but he said, I have the same hunger for the right path. But they did not bother. They just left him. So Siddhartha left Varanasi and went to Rajagriha, the kingdom, the capital of Magadha. The king Bimbisara, knowing that a ascetic who was once a prince has come to the kingdom, gave him a royal reception and offered the kingdom to Siddhartha. But this made no change in Siddhartha. Round about this time, Siddhartha came across another Brahmana ascetic known as Alar Kalam. His practices was uh, his practice was saying that doctrine of nothingness. Since it did not conduce to aversion or absence of passion and nirvana, he left that, and then he visited Uddala Ranaputta. His doctrine was neither consciousness nor non consciousness. This also did not satisfy him. Siddhartha finally moved towards Urvela in Magadha. This place was very suitable for meditation. Under a big peepal tree, that is the bo tree, he started his meditative practices. The river Niranjana, now called Falgu, flows by the city of Gaya from some a little distance from that city. Under this tree, Buddha attained enlightenment. What Buddha had learned till now was neither pain nor pleasure nor mortification. These are not conducive to attainment of peace. He was convinced that control and not suppression as the golden means, not the extremes. Purification of mind is essential. Analyze the cause and remove the cause of suffering and have a determined effect. This leads to the path. Having adopted Padmasana, sitting straight with his spine erect, head and neck in a straight line, he faced the east, west, south, north, and his and eyes filled, eyes and mind concentrated on each quarter. He sent good thoughts like Maitri, compassion, Karuna, and Kalyana, welfare, to each and every creature around that quarter. In course of time, his this meditation purified and he was free from evil ideas and selfish desires. He then began to experience a kind of peace and joy which was almost supersensuous. Again, he remembered the happiness which he had enjoyed sitting under the rose apple tree in his childhood at Lumbini. This concentration became more and more intense and steady. His mind began to experience calmness. This led to and equanimity towards the opposites, joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain. And as it went on becoming purified, it became spotless. As the concentration on destruction of the roots of ignorance and evil, and as he concentrated on the destruction on the roots of ignorance and evil, ultimately he had to fight and win the battle with Mara, the god of desires. This battle of Mara is only a symbolization. It includes lust, aversion, hunger, thirst, craving, sloth, indolence, fear, doubt, anger, hypocrisy, gain, fame, honor, false glory, boasting, condemning others. These are all the army of the Mara, and he crushed it with his wisdom, just like an unbaked earthen bowl. If we put water, how it dissolves. So that's how Siddhartha could uh, uh, gain victory over these and became Buddha or Sambuddhi. He attained Sambodhi or enlightenment. Buddha had to struggle and overcome fear. So, what Buddha used to say was, if people are afraid, they are either not pure in body or action, word, thought, or the way of life. And to prove this, he went forth and on auspicious days, auspicious nights, either on the full moon or half moon, to shrines or in groves in the forest, or stay in the places of horror and have horror wherein which would be hair rising and overcome fear. Now, Sambodhi includes infinite peace, complete sense of fulfillment, and clear knowledge of reality, ineffable bliss, which are characteristic of Sambodhi. After Sambodhi, Buddha sat in Padmasana for 7 days under the bulky tree, enjoying the bliss of emancipation. He contemplated on how things come to be, how ill is born and destroyed. Now he had to take a great decision whether to spread his message or not. He was apprehensive. What if I tell somebody they don't listen to me and I am disturbed by their, or if I get disturbed. So, but finally he decided whatever it is, he will go and preach. Like what he felt was, we can compare a Bhagavad Gita shloka with that. Ishtan bhogan hivo deva dasyante yajna bhavita tairdattana pradayebhyo yo bhunkte stena evasaha. Those who enjoy what is given to them without making offering in return are verily thieves. Those who cook for themselves, like similar to such things. So this made him take it to people and give them the secret of his success. This Buddha's compassion or empathy, feeling or identification with the suffering of others called him back to action in the form of delivering his message of the middle path. Instead of slipping into his ecstatic beatitude of nirvana, he plunged into the ocean of human life full of sufferings and provided struggling humans a boat where he could cross the ocean of existence. Before we close, two small stories. One is how to become a Buddha. Hui Zhang was one of the Zen teachers. He stayed. He lived between 677 and 744 AD. He was a very noble and people respected him. His ways of teaching were unique. People stayed in his ashrama, his Buddhist monastery, and they used to observe how he used to teach people. One of his students was found to always, from morning to evening, continuously going on worshipping. So that boy was questioned by this Hui Zhang, why do you do this? He said, I want to become Buddha. So I am trying to become Buddha by continuously performing. Oh, is it so? Then a few days later, the teacher started. He outside the temple, he started rubbing the brick on a stone. People started thinking, oh, this man has gone out of his head, or become old. But there are people who thought, yes, there is some message. So this boy who was practicing puja only worship whole day came and asked him, what are you doing? He said, I am trying to make this shine like a mirror. He said, how can a brick become a mirror? Then he said, how can you always become Buddha by worshipping? Then he said, worshipping every day, is it wrong? He said, no, you sit down, let me tell you. There is a bullock cart and the cart is not moving well. Whom do you hit? Is it the bullock or the cart? He said, of course the bullock. So similarly the same thing. You are trying to beat the body, but the actual thing is your mind. So try to concentrate your mind, try to train your mind. So whatever path we are taking, we should understand whether it is the body or the mind we are training. The second story is about a horse. There was a king this is actually a Jataka tale from Buddha's life. Buddha himself is narrating. There was a king who loved horses, and there was a horse which he was very, very particularly very fond of. Once he found the horse limping, so he called all the veterinarians from his kingdom. They said nothing is wrong. Other veterinarians from the nearby states, nothing is wrong. So somebody changed the hoof, somebody gave him massage, but still there was no improvement. That time Siddhartha, in his previous birth, came along as a mendicant, and the king asked him, Bodhisattva, what can you please help me out of this? He said, okay, I will do it, but give me a day's time. The next day, whole day went by, and the king was very eager, waiting for the answer. He said, King, there is nothing wrong with the horse. So then why is it limping? The king said, look, the person who is taking care of the horse is limping. The horse is following its master. First, change him. When it was changed, the horse started becoming normal. So, the person who leads the society, whom we are looking for, yadyad acharati shreshta tattadeve tarojanaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastat anuvartate. We can compare this, and whom we follow is important. Let us follow the Buddha's life is a beckoning light for all of us, and let us pray for his grace. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.